I have your back, Ratchet.
Awesome!
Ready, pal?
Deep within the sleeping chambers of Insomniac Games, an exhausted but unyielding development team never sleeps. Working punishing hours deep into the dark hours of the night, attempting to provide gamers with a worthy, next-gen reboot of one of the greatest series of all time, Ratchet and Clank. So here we are, the game based off of the movie, based off of the game. Ratchet and Clank for the PS4 represents not a remastering, but a reimagining of the beloved original of the series, where Insomniac endeavors to modernize the original by building upon well-established gameplay structures of past installments. So is Ratchet and Clank for the PS4 a mere reboot of an old game, developed with the sole purpose of earning some extra nuts and bolts for the company? Or does it stand alone as a worthy inclusion in the franchise's long list of Insomniac greats? Ratchet and Clank is a more cinematic retelling of our hero's origin story, told through the not-so-reliable perspective of the narcissistic egomaniac and over-embellishing anti-hero Captain Qwark. The story is simple. Ratchet and his new friends must traverse a multitude of planets to save the galaxy from the evil Chairman Drek from unleashing his generically evil plans of destruction. While simple, the story is extremely self-aware. Captain Qwark's persistent narrations poke fun at the insanity that unfolds on your screen, while simultaneously providing context to both the story and the gameplay.
Try as he might, Ratchet could not breathe underwater.
However, the story's simplicity extends beyond the plot and bleeds into the character's development. As an origin tale, Ratchet and Clank's unlikely pairing is hardly explored. It is given little room to grow over the course of the game. Nothing new is revealed about their friendship or their personality. However, while the story is essentially vapid and the character dynamics go unexplored, the writers consistently inject humor throughout the cutscenes and the gameplay.
Fine. She and I kind of have a will we, won't we romance in progress.
Uh-huh.
Ratchet and Clank is perhaps the funniest entry in the series. The diverse cast of characters is at times witty, at times hopelessly ignorant, and at times oddly intuitive. But it's always funny.
No problem. See you in the next reboot.
Lastly, the story admittedly suffers from the tie-in to the upcoming movie. Cutscenes from the game are often intercut with clips from the film, and aside from spoiling the upcoming movie, the transition between the two is at times awkward and puzzling. Ratchet and Clank for the PS4 may very well be among the most beautifully rendered games in history. Gorgeous vistas form the background of every galaxy, while meticulously detailed landscapes and enemies comprise the foreground. The game animates beautifully. Ratchet can branch between running, jumping, gliding, shooting, and swinging his wrench with a level of fluidity unseen in most games. Ratchet has never looked so good. Beautiful textures permeate every inch of your screen. Beautiful particle effects and weapon designs, draw distances as far as the eye can see, lighting effects, and a diverse range of colors that bring each galaxy to life, all of which are held together by an almost always consistent 30 frames per second. The level of detail the game is able to produce is absolutely astounding. As cliché as it's beginning to sound, it's absolutely true. Ratchet and Clank truly resembles a Pixar movie. It's even difficult to discern between the in-game cutscenes and the scenes from the movie. There is only one issue, however. During certain cutscenes, facial animation appears rather stiff and vacant, rendering parts of the story as rather dull and lifeless.
To Ratchet and Clank, the chillest dudes I've ever hung out with on a hostile alien planet. Cool.
Moreover, the audio design is equally as impressive as the visual design. Every character is voiced with a unique charm and level of personality that helps offset the story's limited scope and depth. Likewise, sound effects for fired weapons are appropriately explosive, and the sound design in general is state-of-the-art. Finally, even the game's new composer delivers a score that rivals the brilliance of the original trilogy. Someone please put those tracks on YouTube. Ratchet and Clank for the PS4 plays similarly to its predecessors, eerily similar, but that's not a bad thing. Far from it. Ratchet retains his tight controls and fluid animation. The weapons are conventionally ridiculous and unique. The level design is diverse, and it just feels right. Insomniac has modernized the gameplay to more closely align this title with its more recent releases. For example, conventional gameplay staples like weapon leveling and customization constitute a major focus of the combat, while strafing has been included to update player movement. Additionally, attempts to diversify this action platformer include the usual puzzle-solving Clank sections that are occasionally clever and occasionally tedious, high-speed hoverboard races that feature the most ludicrous rubber band AI ever, and spaceship combat that controls quite poorly, where one control stick controls both the camera and the movement. Regardless of the success, or lack thereof, of particular gameplay appetizers, the variety does ensure that the game never gets repetitive.
Ratchet stylishly leapt onto the rail next to him.
So the core gameplay is undoubtedly fantastic, as it always has been, but there are balancing issues on default settings that will surely impact the playthrough of many gamers. Now let me explain. In theory, each firefight should raise questions concerning weapon usage given the layout of the level and enemy distribution/enemy type. However, while each weapon is generally quite distinct from one another, although there are significantly less weapons in this game when compared to previous entries, all are too powerful, rendering each weapon as too effective in all scenarios. However, this issue is entirely mitigated on the hard difficulty setting, and as such, I'd recommend all gamers play on this setting upon starting the game. While playing on hard, the level design forces the user to carefully select between weapons, navigate the terrain strategically, and take cover when necessary. Only on hard mode does Insomniac require more cerebral and more dexterously demanding combat. New to the game are raritanium upgrades, which impart a weapon with beneficial secondary effects, such as increased range or ammunition supply, increasing the complexity and depth of the combat while simultaneously providing users greater choice concerning their battle preferences. While the weapon customization system is quite deep, the system can also have the unwanted effect of altering a weapon's purpose. For example, the Pyrocider, a gun used to take out smaller enemies from a short range, can be transformed into a mid to long range rifle, a major shift from its original and intended function. And when weapons begin to differentiate from their primary function via what are often overpowered upgrades, the entire arsenal begins to bleed into one another, and each WMD starts to lose what once made it so unique. Luckily, this isn't always the case, but the upgrade system must be handled a bit more delicately to ensure that each weapon retains its distinct utility. Lastly, there is a perplexing omission of weapon stats, making it difficult to properly compare and contrast within your armory. Moreover, there are issues with the game's limited enemy AI. For the most part, enemies are programmed to execute a predetermined routine with little room for improvisation. As a result, enemies seldom vary their attacking strategies and are largely unable to adapt dynamically based on the player's choices. For example, adversarial forces are often unable to better position themselves to better target Ratchet, and enemies are mostly limited to one melee animation when combat gets close and personal. Likewise, enemies rarely utilize their surroundings to their advantage. Enemies abstain from hiding behind cover and do not coordinate their movements, so don't expect to be flanked or blockaded or otherwise surprised by enemy strategy. So seemingly aware of the AI restraints, Insomniac opts to arbitrarily increase the challenge by increasing the amount of enemies in a given scenario. Additionally, the increase in level difficulty is artificial. Enemies aren't smarter, but they simply retain greater health and deal more damage. For the series to truly advance to the next level, the AI must be given more parameters with which to act in various situations. Ultimately, even with inadequate AI, firefights in Ratchet and Clank are always filled with tension and incorporate much of the cerebral component to combat that once made earlier installments so challenging and rewarding. But again, that's only on hard mode.
Oh boy. Better find some nanotech.
Now there is one last issue, and it is a big one. The game is just too short, able to be beaten without completing side quests in a mere 6 to 8 hours. The level of content is severely lacking in comparison to previous versions. Still, it's a 6 to 8 hours that you'll never forget. But just remember, these are issues that prevent the game from reaching total perfection. The core gameplay in Ratchet and Clank is still as great as it's ever been. Ratchet and Clank for the PS4 is a proper return to form for the franchise. While not quite able to reach the lofty heights of going commando or up your arsenal, Ratchet's first and hopefully not last outing on next-gen hardware is a literal blast to play through. As a reboot of the original Ratchet and Clank, the game is a near masterpiece. It's simply a reimagining done right. But as a standalone entry in the series, it is admittedly less successful given its unwillingness to push boundaries and take new risks. Still, down to its nuts and bolts, Ratchet and Clank's beautiful visuals, charming story, varied worlds, and larger-than-life weapons make for an out-of-this-world experience. So strap in and blast off. You have a galaxy to save. Ratchet and Clank for the PS4 gets an 8 out of 10. Thank you very much for watching. As an aspiring video game journalist, any feedback and support would be greatly appreciated. My reviews are my portfolio, and the more views my videos earn, the better chance I have to leverage my content when applying to major gaming outlets. Anyway, stay tuned for more reviews, and of course, more sports gaming content. And until next time, I'm out.